All off season long, we're going to be here to tell you who are the best players to draft in fantasy football. But right now, there's one guy we each have in mind who is the best pick you can make. But who is it? Before we reveal those names, let me remind you that if you join flockfantasy.com/endgame, you'll get access to our rankings, bonus videos, bonus articles, and also our video courses, which will help to teach you how to dominate in redraft, in dynasty, and to build a champion right now. That's what we're here for. So check it out, flockfantasy.com/endgame, 30% off any subscription. All right, now let's find out who it is. Chris, I'm dying to know because you haven't told me yet. I want to know who you think is the best pick you can make in a fantasy draft right now.
Are you ready? I don't know if you are. It's Anthony Richardson is the best pick you can make in fantasy football right now. And look, this is even shocking to me. But he's currently going outside the top 130 players. And we've talked about it a lot this offseason, how we're starting to adopt a more early QB, centric mindset in our drafts. Try to get one of those stud elite QBs. But what if you could get one of those stud elite QBs much later in your draft? I think that could be Anthony Richardson this year because he landed in a great spot. He went to Indianapolis with the number 4 pick. He's going to be the starter from day one. He's going to get his chance. Now, I don't believe in Anthony Richardson, the passer, yet. But I 100% believe in Anthony Richardson, the rusher. This guy is off the charts athletic, even better than Lamar Jackson, even better than Justin Fields. And I think he could have a similar season to what we saw from Justin Fields last year. Remember, Justin Fields was literally the worst quarterback through 5 weeks? He was like the number 32 scoring quarterback. And then what happened? They let him start running the ball. He was running the ball like 10 times a game and he took off. I mean, Justin Fields had terrible numbers last year. 2,200 passing yards. This isn't the 1950s. 2,200 passing yards is abysmal. 17 passing touchdowns. He did nothing through the air, and it didn't matter. He averaged over 20 fantasy points. It was a QB5 because of that rushing. Anthony Richardson could legit go for over 1,000 yards rushing, run for 8+ touchdowns, and it will hardly matter what he does through the air because that's basically a high-end RB2 as a quarterback. So I think Anthony Richardson, if you don't get an early elite QB, he's the guy I'm going to fall back to more often than not. I think this year he is going to absolutely come through, at least on the ground and in fantasy for a quarterback. That will be enough.
Yeah, that definitely shocked me. I did not expect that. I mean, look, I can't say I'm on board with that just because, not just because he's a Gator, but Anthony Richardson, I have my doubts. I mean, the quarterback position, I know that we can get fantasy production from a guy who just runs, and like we saw with Fields, that's a great comp. Look at what Justin Fields did through the first half of last year, and then the second half, he didn't do it with his arm. And Richardson maybe has a better receiving core than what Fields had toward the end of last year. But this was second year of Justin Fields, right? This wasn't his rookie season, and Richardson will be out there every game. But man, I just don't know if he'll be good enough. So that is definitely a high-risk, potential high-reward pick. And I like that you're going for the upside there, but man, I don't know if that's a pick I would make. But I'll tell you that I also have a rookie in mind here. And you mentioned Lamar Jackson. Well, Lamar Jackson is somebody who is going to be leading the charge again in Baltimore, but in a different way. You know what? They're actually going to pass the ball this year, and they've committed to it. And a big part of that is by getting him help at receiver. And no, not talking about Odell Beckham. I'm talking about a guy who now has become, I think, my favorite rookie wide receiver of all, and that is Zay Flowers. And I'll tell you right now, being drafted as a number 4 receiver in fantasy, I think that's an absolute steal because he'll be the number 1 receiver in Baltimore, and he could be a top 20 receiver overall. That's how high I am on him. Now, here's the thing. I don't really need to sell you on Flowers. There's a reason he was picked so high, right? First round pick in the NFL draft. The draft capital is there. A lot of teams fell in love with him, what he did in the Senior Bowl, and, his workouts. He's got the talent. He's got the skill set. We've talked about him a bunch this preseason. He's got the goods. But here's the thing. This Baltimore offense, we know, is going to be different because instead of that same old ground and pound and, run and only pass if we really need to, in which case it's already too late because the team knows we're passing, it's 3rd and long, and we don't have anybody to throw it to. Now they actually have some weapons, And Zay Flowers is going to be the top weapon, the top option here. This is a Todd Monken-led offense. If you're familiar with him, he is the guy who led Tampa Bay Bucks to have the top passing offense in the league a couple years ago. And no, not when Tom Brady was the quarterback. Jameis Winston. You remember that year that you wish you had him in fantasy? Because even though he was still throwing picks left and right because he's just not that accurate, he still led the league in passing yardage. And the year before that, they were fourth in passing yardage. He had a high-powered passing offense behind a guy who's not even a starting quarterback anymore. And then you might be familiar with what he did, his work, down there in Georgia in college. Won a couple of back-to-back national championships with Stetson Bennett as his quarterback. All right, this is not a guy who was a high-end recruit, and somehow he made his way into the NFL behind this offensive guru. I'm pretty sure with Lamar Jackson, who's got an MVP under his belt, he can work his magic, and this can be a really good passing offense. And if Flowers is the number one guy, which, again, Odell Beckham, it'll take him, a couple games before he gets hurt. Rashad Bateman, I like Bateman, but Flowers is better physically, and he's coming in fresh, no injury history. I think Flowers is a guy who's going to have 1,000 yards easily under his belt, make a lot of big plays, and he's going so late in drafts. Just an absolute bargain. I'm going to really have a lot of parts of this Baltimore offense this year, but Flowers is the guy I'm going to target everywhere.
I got to be honest. I mean, I really like Flowers. I thought you were going to say Jordan Addison, who I almost picked. So you're team Flowers over Jordan Addison these days?
I like Addison a lot. I really do. But still, I'm looking at the guy who's going to be the number one receiver in his offense. Addison is really solid, but I like the ceiling for Flowers a little bit better. Now you know which players we're drafting every chance we get. What about those running backs that you really need to have a piece of in every draft? Well, check out our must-have running backs right here.